Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We've just come to seek clarification and the thoughts of the telecom chambers on the proposed electronic levy that government intends to introduce in 2022. We all listened to the budget presentation, and key amongst it was the fact that government was going to introduce the electronic levy, or what we now call the E-levy, in a bid to raise sufficient funds because the road toll was being scrapped. To start with, was there an input from the telecommunications chambers or the industry?
Well, thank you very much. The interesting thing is that when it comes to the issues of taxation of the digital financial sector, especially the mobile financial sector, we've had several conversations with the Ministry of Finance, GRA, even the Vice President's office in the past. But for this particular one, when the minister was going to go to Parliament on the 17th to read this, the budget statement, there was no engagement. So there was no input sought from us before the reading of the budget and the laying of that policy statement about the E-levy. But just after it was done, there was a meeting with the GSM, the telecommunication companies, with the Ministry of Communication, the Ministry of Finance, GRA, and the NTA. But it's instructive to note that when it comes to the E-levy, most of the people it would affect within our industry are the mobile financial, the electronic money issuers. And these are companies that are members of the chamber, but the MNOs, so MTN, Airtel, Tigo, Vodafone, they own these companies as separate subsidiaries. So they, in terms of the engagement that happened, they were not present at those engagements. It was their shareholders that were present. So in terms of our input really into it, before it was not done. But when we had that second, the meeting after the budget was read, some ideas were shared. And then also the most instructive thing also was that the Ministry of Finance really laid out details in terms of how they intended for the tax to be implemented. So the Minister for Communication, for example, after the meeting said that we should now leave and be able to go and educate the public about the details of it. So there are some transactions that are covered. So your mobile, if you transferred money, if you are graceful enough to send me some 1,000 CDs, it would attract the 1.75. So mobile to mobile would attract 1.75. If you went to a point of sale and then you purchased anything and you use your mobile money to pay for it, you use your debit card, your credit card to pay for it at the point of sale, it would attract the levy. Also, if you made any merchant payment at all, the merchant payment would also attract the levy. Those other ones that were not included would be if you transferred money from your mobile to your bank wallet, your bank account, or from your mobile wallet, from your bank account to your mobile wallet, it would not attract it. In that meeting, the government also talked about the fact that if you made any payment using the Ghana.gov platform as well, it would also not attract it. And government also, because it wants to protect the vulnerable and wants to push financial inclusion still, and as part of the policy talked about the fact that up to 100 CDs per person is not going to be impacted. And also your bank to bank transfers are not going to be impacted.
So I would want us to take them one by one.
Okay.
So transfer from one mobile entity to another mobile,
yes,
is
a mobile wallet to another mobile wallet. Exactly.
So for instance, if I use Vodafone Cash,
yes,
and I want to transfer to MTN, I don't have to pay.
And it's your own wallet.
My own wallet, but once I'm sending it to Kenashigbe, I'll have to pay.
Yes, exactly. So if it's to yourself, then you don't pay anything. But if you're sending it to any other person, mobile, so let's say you are any of ZPay, for example, or G Money, or Airtel Tigo, or MTN Mobile Money, or Airtel Tigo Cash. If you were sending it to another person, you would pay. If you are sending it to yourself and you own all of that, you will not pay.
Okay. That is understandable. The other issue is this. We already pay 1%, a percentage when we are doing transfers. Is there not too much tax using the mobile money? Because we want to be safe, we want people to have secured, their funds to be secured, transfers should be convenient. Are we now being charged for the convenience or what? Because once this is implemented, it means that, if like the adults, the account proverb will say, but that is how many people are seeing it.
Yes, so it's one of the reasons why for us as an industry, one of the suggestions that we're making to government is that it would be good to start this at a lower rate than we want to do now, because you know that even the charges that the electronic money issuers charge for their services, even the 1%, people complain about that. And some of the services, like when you do the merchant payments and all of that, it's even less than the 1%. Even that, people complain about that. So we think that if you want to start this, it would be great to start at a lower rate. So let's say at 0.25%, so that it's quite insignificant. So when people have to pay it. And then also, we also are proposing that if people went to pay at a merchant point, for example, by December, last Friday, it was just Friday that we had a meeting with the Bank of Ghana, with all the players within the banks, the EMIs, the fintechs, to discuss the universal QR code that government is pushing. And it's supposed to start in December, so let's say you went to a watch seller, around Graphic, and you were going to buy watch, and this watch seller has the QR code pasted there. And in 2022, so you were going to buy a watch of 10 cedis, and then for your 10 cedis watch, you are then asked that if you paid with your QR code, you have to pay 1.75. What will happen? Immediately, people would go and use their cash, and as government bears the cost of cash. So if we really would want to incentivize that, that's why we are suggesting that for the merchant payment, for example, it should completely be exempted, so that you rather would incentivize people from doing that. Not only that as well, that the issues of utilities, it was also one of the things that came up in the meeting, and I think government was open to considering the issues of water, electricity. But it's important to note that now even the ITU considers telecommunication as a utility as well. So it would also, we advise government that in terms of, for if I want to pay for my top up, which already has your CST, has your VAT, NHIL, we should also not have tax on that. So just like any of the merchant payment, that should also not have tax. But if you do that, what will happen is that people will then go back to starting the scratch cards, the fiscal scratch cards again. And so for anything that, there are some unintended consequences. And for us as an industry is how do we support and guide government such a way that some of these unintended consequences do not arise. And so that's why we would also advise that we need to look at the issues of utility payments. And I've heard a few people also talk about some very critical payments that people want to go and buy, some medications and all of that. The only challenge in all of that is also the difficulty in doing that. It is also one of the reasons why governments very well thought out, about the marginalized, and saying that the 100 cedis, if it's 100 cedis per person, then it should be exempted. It is very well thought out, but implementation will be impossible, especially in the near term, because what is happening currently with the 100 cedis is that if I'm on, say, Vodafone Cash or Airtel Tigo Cash, and then I made a payment on that of 30 cedis, then I went to go and buy something and there was a QR code and I scanned it, and I wanted to pay with my bank, and of say 20 cedis, that makes 50 pesos. That makes 20 pesos. That 20 cedis. That makes 50 cedis. Then I go and then I make another payment somewhere on my MTN cash to be able to pay at a point of sales of another 60 cedis. That will take me to 110. It means the 100 cedis has to be exempt, and then the 110, the 10 cedis will be left out. Currently, as we speak, there is no system that we can design in the short term to be able to execute that. So that is near impossible. So our suggestion to government is that, one, at this stage that we have not finished the SIM re-registration, and then all other businesses are also industries are trying to now use the Ghana card. We need to wait and get that done so that in the medium to long term we can figure out how to make it per person. But for now, we should make it per wallet, so that if I had my wallet on ZPay, G Money, MTN mobile money, Vodafone Cash, Airtel Tigo, you take that particular wallet and you give the limit of, and even we think the 100 cedis.
How is that going to work? So for instance, it means that if I use my wallet for the day, the charges should be on that wallet.
So if you use, so you see, and then that's the interesting thing. People do multiple things. So things I could be paying with my, my mobile money at this time. I could then also be at a point of sale, and I'm using my card. So there are a lot of simultaneous transactions that will be going on at the same time. So it will be difficult for you to say that the 100 cedis should be to a person, and all wallet and all payment systems that I have should be applying that. Is the reason why we're suggesting to government that it would be good to start with the easy ones first. Let's make it per wallet. So if I have 5 wallets, so all the wallets should be 100 cedis, and even with the 100 cedis, we think we should move it up. The interesting thing also then is this whole discriminatory thing, where in the past we used to have bank charges. There was VAT on it. The government thought that it was a nuisance. It took it off. But now, in coming up with the E-levy, though this is supposed to be electronic transaction, it is not on bank transfers, but it is on mobile money transfers. And a lot of these are market people. They might not even be doing e-commerce. I go to Kumadan and I go and buy tomatoes. So I have done my extended KYC, so I'm able to, when COVID came, the limit on which transfers I can make in a day was expanded. So this market person wants to send 5,000 cedis to her, the person who supplied her. And you're saying that that person, if he does it from mobile money to mobile money, you are going to charge on that 5,000 1.75. It might be all the person's profits. So what would the person do? It's either the person will walk to a bank because the banks are exempt and send it, then that's discriminatory against the mobile money and the people within the mobile financial service place, or the person will cash the cash and then go and pay it. So another suggestion that we are saying,
pass it on to the consumer.
Exactly, pass it on. If the consumer will be able to afford it, pass it on to the consumer. So what we are suggesting, that in terms of the charges that are on mobile financial service, especially the mobile money people, they cap it. So at 1,000 cedis, some of them are not even charging at all. Some of the operators don't charge at all for transfers. Some of them will cap it at a particular point, So we could also cap the taxes at a particular point. Say beyond a particular point, say 1,000 cedis is the same amount you pay, so that you don't make it a disincentive for those who do a lot of the big transaction. So another suggestion that we are making to government is that, that people who pay salaries even using mobile money, so they pay their staff salaries through mobile money. Now you are saying to them that when they want to pay that salary, that they've deducted the PAYE of that person, even as I'm paying the person on mobile money, then you will take the tax. If I was paying into the person's bank account, I wouldn't do that. So that also then would make people change their behaviors, and then becomes detrimental to the people within the mobile money area. So leap payments and all of that are done on mobile money. So one of the things we also recommended to government is that bulk payments that are made, let's exempt those ones for the time being. So let's look at things that we can do, take out some of these that already are facilitating the financial inclusion, the digitization policy. I've seen the SNIT DG talk about the fact that by the end of the year, they are going to be launching an app that will allow people to be able to pay their pensions, on that particular app. So you don't want to, make that punitive. You want to make sure that all of that is,
I guess
is
that
exempted.
is to entice the informal sector.
Exactly.
And so if already I'm reluctant to pay, and now I have to pay taxes,
it won't happen. That revenue won't come. So those are the kind of conversations that we are having with government and engagement that we're having. It's good that at this stage it's at a policy level and it's been laid at Parliament. How do we all support? So we should all go into this mindful of the fact that definitely it is not sustainable for government to continue borrowing. The deficit comes back to hurt all of us as consumers, as businesses. But we cannot also tax in such a way that we will kill this digitization drive that government is on. We will kill the financial inclusion drive that government is on. So how do we do this in such a way that government is able to still get some revenues to come in, and then also, as it does all of that, also be able to ensure that these sectors should grow? For example, the issue of the toll booths, digitizing that and allowing people to pay through digital means would deal with the issues of the inefficiencies that are in there, so nobody will be able to pocket any of the monies. It would also deal with the speed at which you'll be able to collect, so you don't need to stop, give money for you to collect change and all of that. So the pace at which people move would be speeded up. Also, you don't then convert the dynamic load that the vehicles moving put on the surfaces at the toll booths. So you all of those things will not be there. And even once you digitize it, you can decide based on data that you take. If you know that in the mornings there's a lot of traffic there, then you pay a lot more. So if you choose to go that, then what you do is that you pay a lot more. If you go at night where there's less traffic, you also then pay lesser than, so that we believe that government's drive, this, Bank of Ghana is supposed to be starting its electronic currency. As I said, the GHQR is about starting. There's so much digitization going on, and so we should be careful that in our quest to ensure that we expanding our tax net, we don't get a situation where we roll back all the good job that has been done already with this digitization drive. And you see, another thing about this whole argument of expanding the tax net, with this form of expansion of the tax net, what you want to do is that you want to make sure that those who are not paying taxes are brought into the net. So in implementing this E-levy one, don't do it in such a way that you and I, Rosalind, who already are paying our, before we are paid, our employers would have deducted our PAYE, and that is paid to government. Don't start, instead of these other people, and I don't want to call them the informal sector. For us in Ghana, it is our real sector. So those people who are currently in the real sector of the economy, who are not paying, a lot of the artisans, a lot of the traders who are not paying, how do we find a way of bringing them in? And the good way of bringing them in is the merchant payment. Because once you start merchant payments and you have visibility over how much cash it is that they get, then you can, after they have taken their cost out and there's profit, then you are taxing the profit they've done. So it is not me who already have paid my PAYE and then I'm going to send money to or pay the person for a service is rendered to me. Then the cash that I'm using to pay the person, you also are taxing that as well. And so that's the spirit with which for us from industry, we want to approach this and say to government that let's make sure that this thing is not discriminatory and does not become a mobile money task, but it's actually the word that it is. It is an electronic transaction levy. So if the banks are also doing transactions, yes, how do we also bring them into to also contribute, but we all contribute at a lower quantum. So let's start with a lower level rather than 1.75 in such a way that it would encourage other people to also pay for it.
Well said, sir. we all know that we already pay the communication service tax, or it's been scrapped.
No, that's going to be paid.
So with this introduction, with the introduction of the E-levy, how does it affect it means that talk is no longer cheap.
Well, you see the interest. So that's one of the things we are asking government to look at, because what would happen is that if you bought, say, a top up of 10 cedis, what would happen is that we would compute your NHIL levy of 2.5, compute the Get Fund levy of 2.5, then we will do the COVID levy of the 1%, then we will compute the E-levy of 1.75. Before, you see, the final tax, VAT is the final tax. Before the VAT now will be slapped onto all of that. I don't know. I don't know whether government is even going to leave that in there for VAT to be slapped on it. So yes, definitely, if government pushes the way it's going, then it will not be cheap. But if government, and I'm sure government would already starting to listen to all the conversations that are going on, and we can do it well, I think one of the things to do is to exempt talk. So that if I am especially because you see, this would only happen if you buy digitally. If you do an e-transaction, that's only, but when somebody buys a scratch card, the person will not suffer that. So if we took it out completely, then the person who buys a scratch card, the person who does it also by his mobile money or uses his bank wallet to also pay for his top-up, would then not suffer that.
But already, we all know that the telcos are now going seriously into using the digital ways of purchasing data and talk time. And so indirectly, the telcos are helping government, because now MTN, you can't buy a scratch card.
Yes.
And so it means that, once you want to stay connected, you need to pay for it. And that makes it, for the ordinary person, especially when we know that it's not everybody who can, people buy it and 2 cedis, 1 cedi, and all that. How are they? How is that? It means that digitization is convenient, but it's not cheap.
Yes, and you see, the thing about it is also to realize that the market is a very competitive market. The telecom market is a very competitive market. So if I am in, say, Chairman, in my town, my hometown in Chairman, and I wanted to buy scratch card, and for you, operator 1, you don't have a scratch card, so I have to buy digitally. What will happen is that, and you see, it's easy to port. I would or own another SIM card. So all I do is move. So definitely the businesses would have to respond to that business imperative. Because if most of the customers want to buy, they don't want to pay the taxes, and because of that convenience, they are moving to buy the scratch card, you will find them that they will move into that direction. So businesses would have to respond to that particular imperative. It's just like the cash one. If there's cash, if I can use cash to make a purchase, and you're saying that you rather put a tax on the merchant payment, definitely you find people move.
Is that what the Ghana Telecommunications Chamber wants?
No, at all. So it's the reason why we're engaging government, and we are also, based on where we sit and what we see in terms of consumer behavior, being able to advise government and say, if we go in this particular direction, the revenue that we seek would not come. The behaviors that we want to enforce, the cash light behavior that we want to enforce, will not happen. And what will happen is that the revenue will not come. Government will also have to spend a lot more money now, processing. Cash is very expensive. For Bank of Ghana, the management of cash is all very expensive. And so it is the reason why we're saying that there are other means of being able to raise this revenue. And one of them I've just said to you is that instead of saying that it's just a sender that pays in some of these things, look at it when people go to cash out. The cash out rather, and the interesting thing is that a large chunk of the revenue that comes into the mobile money industry comes from a cash out. And so if you want, and already we know that we want the monies to stay on our devices and use it for transaction rather than encouraging people to do cash out. There's a story told about an East African, island where, they've tried, digitization and all of that. So that is working. But what they notice is that every time they are having to send money onto the island, because once people send money to those people on their devices, they immediately go to the next vendor and they want to do a cash. Exactly, they want to cash it out. And I think maybe you've also not noticed, go to stand at the ATMs at the malls, any of the malls. You will see, and at all the malls, you find out that there are a lot of POSs, there are a lot of digital means in which people can pay. But you see people standing by coming to the ATMs, going to withdraw cash, and then going to pay. That is consumer behavior, and so you don't want to reinforce that. You don't want to push a cash agenda. You want to push a cash light agenda. So you want to make it easier and convenient for people to do the things that will take government costs. Because you see, if Bank of Ghana, for example, has a huge savings in terms of the fact that they don't have to print money, you can invest that money into other means. It would help. So for us as a chamber, our whole attitude up to this one is that how do we support government to be able to do this and do this in such a way that it does not become detrimental. Interestingly, we have examples in other markets where these things have happened, and we know that the impact.
So are there examples?
Yes, so you have the example of Uganda, where they introduced the social media tax. Even that was on 1.75, and then when that was applied, we know the impact, and so they had to scrap it. And then they introduced the internet data as well, and all of that, it had challenges on them. You look at the Kenyan example, you look at the Tanzanian example. So what we want to do as an industry is that how do we engage government, in this particular thing, so that their objectives of being able to raise revenue, their objectives of the digitalization, financial inclusion, job creation. And that a lot of the young people, they are riding on the backs of these mobile financial services for their businesses, and then also job creation. All of that is supported. And then definitely we also do not believe that discriminating against mobile financial services as opposed to the banking industry is something that we should do, because when we do that, you will find out that user behavior will change.
Finally, this afternoon, Dr. Ali Achina, one of the experts on tax, is calling for a suspension of the proposed tax until it is very clear what government wants to do and how he wants to do it. Do you think it's a good call?
Well, I think that for us, I think the engagements with government should happen first, for them to see how best to be able to do this. The way it's being announced, if we go that particular route, would not work. But also sitting in that meeting that started the engagement, you can see that the policy maker is amenable to be able to take input such that changes will happen. So you saw in the text, or the text that was sent, issues of utilities and all were not part of it, but you're now beginning to see that the .gov, other utilities are being considered. So I think that the objective of raising revenue, expanding the tax net is good, but we should make sure that the unintended consequences do not crystallize. And so I definitely would support my brother Ali that we need a lot more engagement to be able to do this in such a way that inures to the benefit of Ghana. We have to ensure that the marginal return out of this policy will not be negative. But the statement as is, and even what the explanation that have been done, the exemptions and co, would really not help us. And I think I need to reiterate again that the way in which we want to apply the exemption as per person is speaking as an engineer, is technically impossible to achieve that by January. I'm sure even if you gave us up to December, it would be very, very difficult to be able to get that done. The mobile money interoperability that we're working with GIBS with, done great job. But even that, which is just the banks and the mobile, the EMIs, the fintechs, all connected to a central point. That even that we have reconciliation issues on that. And now when you have a situation where you have banks, you have fintechs, you have the EMIs, it would really, you have the card companies and all of that, it would really be difficult to be able to execute that. So from the point go, this 100 CDs limit per person, it's impossible to do from a technical point of view. So we might have to look at that and say, how are you able to do that? The best way of going at that might be on a wallet basis. So if I have 2 wallets, every wallet is at that particular point. And also,
so for instance, if I have a wallet and I consume And you have already proposed that the amount should go up.
Yes.
So let's assume that government still would keep it at 100 cedis. So for every 100 cedis I spend on my wallet, then I pay the 1.7.
So on a daily basis, what government is saying that if you spend up to 100 cedis, you don't pay anything. If you spend 150 cedis.
If I had to transfer, so for instance, my daughter is in school.
Yes.
And I need to send money to her or send money to pay for an extra class or something. And I'm sending her 250 cedis.
Yes. So
I don't get taxed on the 100 cedis.
The 100 cedis, so
but I get taxed on the 150.
Yes. Yes,
to pay school fees.
So currently, even to pay, well, from the way it is structured.
And I remember, I mean, the very day the budget was presented, I mean, somebody called and asked, so madam, if I went to sell and I had to pay my daily income taxes, and or I have been paid, I mean, I want to go and transact a business that requires that I pay my tax. Then I have to pay, and I'm using my mobile money. The tax that I'm going to pay,
fortunately,
I need to pay.
No. Now, fortunately, based on if you read a text that was read in Parliament, it would seem as if you have to pay. But with the document that has been released by a government and the engagement, because you are going to do that on the Ghana.gov platform, you don't have to pay. So you won't pay tax on paying your taxes. That's
I'm not using the Ghana.gov. I'm just using a mobile money app.
So I'm sure gradually you would have to, well, so those are the reasons why I'm saying if the Ghana.gov is not available and you're using your mobile money to pay directly, I'm pretty sure that these are some of the things we're telling government that they need to look at, because you cannot be asking people that if I'm going to, pay taxes, if I'm going to pay for other government services, if I'm going to pay, so can you imagine that I'm sick and I'm going to the hospital and I have to pay my medical bills and I'm paying my mobile money? It will not be fair to be taxing that as well. So those are some of the things that we think that there are a lot of use cases that government needs to look at and say, these ones at this particular stage, we should not really be taxing them. And things like merchant payments, rather, we should really be looking at it and saying that should be allowed. It's at the nascent stage as we speak, so we should allow that to go. Another thing I remember earlier on when we were engaging government about other means by which we could raise revenue for government, one of the suggestions that as an industry we made to government was the float. The money that sits on when you do mobile money, it goes into your bank account. It does not all go at the same time. You want to keep that money there. So the interest on that particular float, we think the government can take a good chunk of it. Currently, it is shared between the owner of the wallet, the EMIs, and then the banks. But government, we believe that that's an area government can look at, and government can take a part of that. So we've made suggestions about the cash out, that we can look at the cash out and look at how we can tax from there, because that will give government some good money, and then it will also disincentivize cashing out. And two, also the float as well. We can look at the issues of the float, and then the quantum, look at the reducing it so a lot more people will not run away from it, still use it, so that the whole thing about the trickles would come in and then you get a huge chunk. And then also let's look at this thing and let's not make it discriminatory against the mobile money
Finally,
services.
sir, I mean, this year government and the GRA has rolled out a plan to get everybody's Ghana card linked with your PIN number. And it is one of the ways they hope to improve revenue generation, because obviously if you had a TIN number or you had your Ghana card but you were not paying taxes, they'll be able to find out. Wouldn't it have been better for government to have tried out how this exercise would have turned out, to know the actual impact it has made before deciding to probably introduce the electronic levy in 2023? Because as it says, we don't even know the number of people who would register with the TIN card to their Ghana card and all that.
So I think that definitely that process of linking, your TIN number to your Ghana card was an excellent one. Immediately it increased the pool from which taxes could be collected. Immediately increased it. And I think this whole business about the SIM registration, using the Ghana card also then helps. Then you go to so the banks. It will be good to get all the banks to also make sure that everybody's account, if you have a mobile money that you've linked onto it, that is also linked, so that everything then is linked up to the Ghana card as a database. So once you get that happening, then it makes it easy for you to be able to trace everybody and to find anybody, and you cannot hide. Then it would be a perfect point for you to be able to get everybody to begin contributing their taxes, to the extent that you could even actually lower it. So I definitely hear you, and if you just look at the policy the way it is read, if it was implemented that way, it would completely be against government's own digitalization agenda, and trying to integrate all the database to be able to ensure that we brought everybody into the tax brackets. So it's the reason why for us as an industry, what we will be urging government is that let's look at all of these things that we are doing as a country, this whole digitalization drive and all that we have been doing, the things that have made Ghana the fastest growing mobile money market, and say that how do we still get some revenue out of this industry without necessarily killing the hens that are laying the golden egg. We know there've been talk about e-commerce and all of that, how and for us as a chamber, we've been working with GRA, even how we're going to get entities such as the Facebooks and all of that, who are non-resident in here, to also start contributing to the tax net. All of that are beginning to happen, but we need to do it in such a way that we don't put spokes into the wheel that has to turn around, to ensure that we are getting production to move so that taxes can come, and so that we can grow this economy of ours.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.